The cabin lights dimmed aboard Flight 2187 from Phoenix to Boston. Rain pelted the windows as the aircraft pushed through turbulent skies. In seat 14A, 24-year-old Maya Rodriguez gently rocked her fussing 6-month-old daughter Sophia. Exhaustion etched across her face. The young mother's worn sweater and scuffed shoes told a story of struggle before she even spoke a word. When the distinguished businessman in the expensive suit beside her leaned over and whispered, "Daddy's here," Maya's world stopped spinning. The man who had walked away when she told him she was pregnant was now the CEO sitting in first class, who'd been bumped to economy due to overbooking. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Maya hadn't always lived paycheck to paycheck. 2 years ago, she'd been a promising marketing student on scholarship at Arizona State University, just 1 semester away from graduation. Her long dark hair was usually pulled back in a neat ponytail, her warm brown eyes reflecting determination despite the odds stacked against her. The daughter of Mexican immigrants who worked tirelessly in the service industry, Maya had been the first in her family to attend college. Her parents had instilled in her a fierce work ethic and unwavering faith that guided her through the toughest moments. That fateful night at the business networking event in downtown Phoenix had changed everything. Maya had been working as a student ambassador, helping to organize the gala where local entrepreneurs connected with promising students. That's where she met Nathan Wells, a rising tech executive visiting from Boston. His confident smile and genuine interest in her marketing ideas had swept her off her feet. Their brief but intense romance lasted only 2 weeks before he returned to Boston, promising to stay in touch. When Maya discovered she was pregnant a month later and called him with the news, his number was disconnected. All her emails bounced back. The man had vanished without a trace. Now, on this stormy April evening, as little Sophia's cries grew louder, Maya felt every judgmental stare from fellow passengers like daggers. She reached into her worn diaper bag, searching for the pacifier, while whispering soothing words in Spanish. "Tranquila, mi amor, todo estará bien." The business trip to Boston was her last hope, an interview for a marketing position at a company that offered remote work options and childcare assistance. She'd scraped together every penny for this one-way ticket, staying with a distant cousin once she arrived. "Would you like me to hold her for a moment?" The deep voice beside her broke through Sophia's wails. Maya turned to politely decline when her eyes met his. The perfectly tailored suit, the expensive watch, the salt and pepper hair that was once jet black. Recognition dawned in an instant. Nathan Wells, now apparently a CEO, sat beside her, extending his hands toward her crying daughter. His steel blue eyes showed no sign of recognizing her, but Maya's heart pounded against her ribs as memories flooded back. "No, thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned away, pressing Sophia closer to her chest, as if to shield her from the man who'd abandoned them before he even knew them. The irony was almost too much to bear. Of all the flights and all the seats, fate had placed them side by side. Nathan shrugged and returned to reviewing documents on his tablet, occasionally glancing at the young mother struggling beside him. "First flight with the little one?" he asked conversationally, his Boston accent more pronounced than she remembered. Maya nodded stiffly, avoiding his gaze. "Yes." "Business or pleasure?" he continued, seemingly oblivious to her discomfort. "Business," she replied, the word feeling like acid on her tongue. The business was fighting for a chance to provide for the daughter he had helped create and then abandoned. The cabin hit another patch of turbulence, causing Sophia to wail louder. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment as she noticed a businessman across the aisle rolling his eyes. She fumbled through her bag again, this time for a bottle, but in her nervousness, it slipped from her fingers and rolled under the seat in front of her. Nathan retrieved it smoothly, handing it back to her with a kind smile that never reached his eyes. "Traveling with kids is tough. I have a daughter about her age," he offered. Maya froze, bottle halfway to Sophia's mouth. He had another child? Had he abandoned that mother too, or had he chosen to be present in that child's life while ignoring Sophia's existence? The injustice of it burned in her throat. "My wife and I adopted her last year," he continued, pulling out his phone to show a picture of a smiling baby girl with Asian features. "Best decision we ever made." Relief and confusion washed over Maya. So he wasn't the type to abandon all his children, just hers. She nodded politely at the photo, while Sophia finally accepted the bottle and began to quiet down. "I'm Nathan Wells, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "CEO of Stellar Tech Solutions. We're headquartered in Boston." Maya hesitated before taking his hand, wondering if his palm would feel familiar, if some part of him would recognize her. "Touch." "Maya Rodriguez," she replied, studying his face for any flicker of recognition. There was none, just the polite smile of a privileged executive making small talk on a flight. Had she changed so much in 2 years? The stress of single motherhood, working 3 jobs while trying to finish her degree online. Perhaps it had aged her beyond her years, or perhaps she'd been so insignificant to him that her face had simply faded from his memory like morning. "Missed. What brings you to Boston, Maya?" Nathan asked, closing his tablet. "A job interview," she said, deciding there was no harm in honesty about that much. "Marketing position with Horizon Innovations." Nathan's eyebrows rose. "That's one of our subsidiary companies. Small world." Maya's stomach dropped. If he was connected to the company where she was interviewing, could he sabotage her chances once he realized who she was? The job at Horizon was her lifeline. Remote work, flexible hours, benefits that would cover Sophia's health care. "They're good people," Nathan continued, unaware of her internal panic. "Very family-friendly company culture. Is someone watching?" "Your daughter during the interview?" "My cousin," Maya said, her mind racing with the implications of this connection. "It's just us, really. Her father isn't in the picture." She watched his face carefully as she said it. Nothing, not even a flicker of guilt crossed his features. "That's tough," he said, with what sounded like genuine sympathy. "My sister raised my niece alone. It takes incredible strength." Sophia finished her bottle and Maya lifted her to her shoulder, patting her back gently. The baby's big brown eyes, so much like Maya's own, peered curiously at Nathan over her mother's shoulder. For a heart-stopping moment, Maya wondered if he would see himself in Sophia's face. There was something of him there, in the shape of her nose, the curve of her eyebrows. Nathan smiled at the baby, who offered a gummy grin in return. "She's beautiful," he said. "How old?" 6 months. Maya replied, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. 6 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. Born on a Tuesday morning after 18 hours of labor, with only a hospital nurse holding Maya's hand because her parents couldn't afford to fly in from Phoenix. Nathan's expression shifted slightly, a brief furrow of his brow as if doing mental calculations. "She seems very alert for her age," he observed, reaching out to let Sophia grab his finger. The baby giggled, unaware that she was touching her father for the first time. The flight attendant passed by, offering drinks. Nathan ordered a scotch. "Neat." Maya asked for water, remembering how he'd ordered the same scotch at the hotel bar the night they met. She wondered if he still lived in the same upscale neighborhood he'd mentioned, if he still worked the punishing hours he'd described, if he still claimed to want children someday when the time was right. The turbulence increased, and the seatbelt sign dinged on. Sophia, startled by the noise, began to cry again. Maya bounced her gently, fishing through her bag for the small stuffed elephant that sometimes soothed her. Finding it, she handed it to Sophia, who immediately stuffed one ear into her mouth. "You're very good with her," Nathan commented, watching their interaction. "Some parents seem overwhelmed, but you have a natural instinct." The compliment, though, well-intentioned, stung like salt in a wound. Maya had learned to be good with Sophia because she'd had no choice. No partner to tag in when exhaustion overwhelmed her. No one to take the 3 a.m. feedings every other night. Her natural instinct had been forged in the fire of necessity. "Thank you," she said simply, because her abuela had taught her that courtesy costs nothing, even when offered to those who deserve far less. As the plane hit another rough patch, Sophia began to wail again, her little face reddening with distress. Maya tried everything, the pacifier, gentle bouncing, soft singing, but nothing calmed her baby's fear of the turbulence. Then, to Maya's shock, Nathan began to hum a low, soothing melody. It was the same song he'd once sung to her in the quiet darkness of his hotel room. "Stand by me." Sophia's cries gradually subsided as she turned toward the sound, her eyes wide with curiosity. "May I?" Nathan asked, holding out his arms. Too stunned to refuse, Maya carefully transferred Sophia to his experienced hold. The baby settled against his chest, as if she somehow recognized the rhythm of his heartbeat. "There we go," he murmured, continuing to hum softly. "Daddy's here," he whispered. The words meant as a generic comfort to a stranger's child, unaware of the painful truth behind them. Maya turned toward the window, tears sliding silently down her cheeks as rain continued. To batter the plane. In that moment, she made a decision. Before this flight landed in Boston, Nathan Wells would know exactly who she was and who Sophia was to him. The turbulence finally subsided as Flight 2187 reached cruising altitude. The cabin lights dimmed further, creating a cocoon of false intimacy among strangers hurtling through the night sky together. Nathan Wells continued holding Sophia, who'd fallen asleep against his expensive cashmere sweater, leaving a small drool spot he either didn't notice or didn't mind. Maya watched them through tear-blurred eyes, feeling as though she'd stumbled into some alternate reality. The man who had disappeared when she needed him most was now cradling their daughter with the practiced ease of someone who valued fatherhood. The contradiction made her chest ache. "She trusts you," Maya said softly. Breaking the silence between them, Nathan smiled down at the sleeping infant. "Kids have good instincts. My wife says I have a calming presence, though my employees might disagree." He chuckled quietly, careful not to disturb Sophia. Maya studied his profile in the dim cabin light. The success of the past 2 years had refined him. His jawline seemed sharper, the subtle grey at his temples giving him an air of distinguished authority he'd lacked when they'd met. Stellatech Solutions had only been a promising startup then. Now, according to the In-Flight magazine she'd thumbed through earlier, it was one of Boston's fastest-growing tech companies, recently featured in Fortune magazine. "You mentioned you have a daughter through adoption," Maya asked, needing to understand this man who could choose to be a father to one child while abandoning another. Nathan nodded, his expression softening. "Grace. She's 7 months old. My wife and I tried for years," he trailed off, then seemed to collect himself. "Medical issues made it impossible. The adoption was finalized 3 months ago after a 2-year process." "That's a long time to wait for your child," Maya observed, unable to keep a slight edge from her voice. If Nathan noticed her tone, he didn't show it. "Worth every minute. The day we brought her home was the best day of my life." He shifted slightly, to reach into his pocket, careful not to wake Sophia. He pulled out his wallet and showed Maya a photo of a beaming woman with auburn hair holding a beautiful Asian baby girl. "My wife, Rebecca, and Grace." Maya felt a confusing tangle of emotions seeing the evidence of his picture-perfect family. The gold wedding band on his finger glinted in the dim light. She hadn't noticed it at the networking event 2 years ago. Had he been married then? The thought made her stomach churn. "How long have you been married?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. 5 years in July, he replied. The math was clear. He had been married when they met, when he'd pursued her, when he'd never once mentioned a wife waiting for him back in Boston. The revelation shouldn't have surprised her. A man who could abandon his unborn child could certainly betray his wife, but somehow it made the wound deeper. "Congratulations," she managed to say, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. The flight attendant passed by again, offering a second round of drinks. Nathan declined this time, explaining that he didn't want to disturb the sleeping baby. His consideration for Sophia's comfort only confused Maya further. How could someone be so thoughtful in small ways while being so cruelly negligent in ways that mattered most? "So, what position are you interviewing for at Horizon?" Nathan asked, seeming genuinely interested. "Digital marketing manager," Maya replied. "I specialized in multicultural marketing strategies at ASU before." She gestured toward Sophia, the unfinished degree hanging between them like a ghost. Nathan's eyebrows raised, looking impressed. "That's actually perfect timing. Horizon just landed a major contract targeting Latino consumers. They've been struggling to find someone with the right background." Maya felt a flicker of hope amid the turmoil. "Really? That's exactly my wheelhouse. My thesis was on effective digital engagement with first and second generation Hispanic Americans. Did you complete your degree?" he asked. The question stung, though he couldn't have known why. "No, life had other plans," she said, looking pointedly at Sophia. "I'm 6 credits short, taking online classes when I can." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "You know, Horizon has a completion program for employees, tuition assistance, flexible scheduling. It was Rebecca's initiative, actually. She's their HR director." Maya's breath caught. Nathan's wife was the HR director at the company where she was interviewing? The threads of fate seemed to be weaving an increasingly complex tapestry around them. If Rebecca saw Maya's resume, would she make the connection to Phoenix 2 years ago? Would she recognize Maya's name from credit card receipts or phone records, or whatever breadcrumbs Nathan might have left behind? "I didn't realize," Maya said carefully. "The position was posted through a recruiting agency." "Typical Rebecca," Nathan said with obvious affection. "She believes in blind hiring processes, says it reduces unconscious bias. The first round is always handled externally, no names attached to applications, just qualifications." He looked down at Sophia, adjusting the baby blanket around her tiny shoulders. "She'd be impressed by your determination, finishing your education while raising a child alone." The irony was almost too much to bear. Maya swallowed hard, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. The wife of the man who had abandoned her and their child might be impressed by her struggle to overcome that very abandonment. "Your wife sounds like a remarkable woman," Maya said, meaning it despite everything. Anyone who created programs to help working parents deserved respect. "She is," Nathan agreed. "After everything she's been through, she still puts others first." A shadow crossed his face. "The fertility treatments were hard on her, physically, emotionally. We were in a rough place for a while." Maya's anger faltered slightly. Had that rough place been when she met him? It didn't excuse his behavior, and nothing could, but it offered a glimpse into his mindset during that time. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, surprised to find she meant it. Suffering didn't justify causing others pain, but it did make the human behind the actions more comprehensible. Nathan carefully shifted Sophia, who stirred slightly but remained asleep. "You know what's strange? She reminds me of someone," he said, studying the baby's face. "Something about her eyes when she smiles." Maya's heart raced. This was it, the moment of recognition she both dreaded and longed for. "Does she?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the drone of the engines. Before Nathan could answer, the plane dropped suddenly, hitting an air pocket that jolted everyone forward. Sophia woke with a startled cry. Other passengers gasped and gripped their armrests as the fasten seatbelt sign dinged on urgently. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected turbulence." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Please return to your seats immediately and secure your seatbelts." Nathan instinctively tightened his hold on Sophia, one hand cradling her head protectively as he passed her back to Maya. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and for a moment Maya thought she saw a flicker of something. Recognition, confusion, déjà vu, in his eyes. But then Sophia's cries grew louder, and the moment was gone. "It's okay, sweetie," Maya soothed, holding Sophia close as the plane continued to bounce through rough air. "Mama's here." Nathan watched them, a peculiar expression on his face. "You know," he said, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the baby's cries and the rattling cabin, "I could put in a good word for you at Horizon. No promises, but I could mention your qualifications to Rebecca." Maya looked at him, torn between pride and necessity. She wanted to earn this position on her own merits, not through the pity of the man who had abandoned her. But Sophia's future had to come before her pride. "That's very kind," she finally said. "Thank you. Do you have a resume with you? I could take a look, give you some feedback before the interview." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "In my carry-on." She gestured to the bag stowed under the seat in front of her. Nathan retrieved it for her, their knees brushing in the cramped economy row. Maya balanced Sophia in one arm while digging through the bag with her free hand, eventually producing a folder containing several copies of her resume. She handed one to Nathan, suddenly self-conscious about the gap in employment that coincided with Sophia's birth. He studied it carefully, expression unreadable. ASU, Marketing Club President, internship at Garcia and Associates. Impressive background, he murmured. Then his finger paused on a line and his brow furrowed. Phoenix Entrepreneurs Gala Student Ambassador, he read aloud. When was this? Maya's mouth went dry. 2 years ago, April. Nathan stared at the resume, then at Maya, then at Sophia. The mental calculations were visible on his face, the timing, the dates, the connections slowly crystallizing. "I was at that gala," he said slowly. "I was a speaker. Stellar Tech was just securing our first round of major funding." "I know," Maya said quietly, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "We met there." His face paled, the polished confidence cracking as recognition finally dawned. "Maya," he whispered, the name clearly surfacing from buried memories. "Maya Rodriguez, the marketing student with the presentation on digital community building." She nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs as the moment of truth arrived. Sophia had quieted, as if sensing the gravity of the exchange between the adults. "And Sophia," he began, looking down at the baby who had fallen back asleep, her tiny hand curled around the collar of Maya's sweater, "is 6 months old." Maya finished for him, watching realization transform his features. Nathan's eyes widened as the final piece clicked into place. "She's mine," he said, not a question but a stunned realization. The plane continued to bounce through turbulent skies, but the real storm was just beginning in row 14 of Flight 2187. Silence stretched between them like a tightrope, taut and dangerous. The ambient sounds of the aircraft, the hum of engines, the soft dings of call buttons, the murmur of conversations, faded to white noise as Nathan stared at Sophia with new eyes. His face had drained of color, making the faint lines around his mouth more pronounced. "How can you be sure?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible. Maya felt a surge of anger. "Because there was no one else, Nathan. Because she has your eyes and your chin. Because I tried to tell you, but you disappeared." Her words were quiet but edged with 2 years of pent-up hurt. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect corporate coif. "I changed my number when I got back. To Boston. Company security protocol. After the funding round, we received some threats. He trailed off, recognizing how hollow the explanation sounded in the face of what had happened. I emailed you, Maya countered, multiple times. He winced. After the gala, I took some time off. My assistant was handling all communications. His eyes darted away, then back to her face. Rebecca and I were separating. The fertility treatments, the pressure, it had all become too much. We'd filed preliminary divorce papers. Maya's grip on Sophia tightened slightly. So you came to Phoenix, met me, and never mentioned you were married. We were over, at least I thought we were. His voice cracked slightly. When I returned to Boston, Rebecca wanted to try again. One last attempt at making our marriage work. I agreed. Deleted social media, changed numbers, focused entirely on rebuilding what we'd broken. He looked down at his hands, where his wedding band caught the dim cabin light. By the time my assistant mentioned your emails, months had passed. She said they seemed personal, not business-related, so she hadn't forwarded them. You could have checked them yourself, Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions. You could have made sure there was nothing important. Nathan nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly. I should have, but I was trying to erase everything. From that period, the fights with Rebecca, the almost divorce, the ways I'd acted when I thought my marriage was over. He glanced at Sophia, who slept peacefully against Maya's chest. I never thought that there would be consequences. Maya finished for him. The plane hit another patch of turbulence, and the overhead bins rattled ominously. It seemed fitting, the physical manifestation of the turbulence shaking their lives at that very moment. I need to process this, Nathan said, his CEO confidence stripped away, revealing the flawed man beneath. Do you have proof? Medical records or... He stopped abruptly, seeming to realize how the question sounded. Maya's eyes flashed. I'm not trying to scam you, if that's what you're asking. I didn't even know you'd be on this flight. I didn't come looking for you. That's not what I meant, he backpedaled. It's just, this changes everything. My marriage, my family with Rebecca and Grace, I need to be certain. A paternity test would confirm it, Maya said coolly. Though anyone with eyes can see she has your features. Nathan looked more carefully at Sophia, studying her sleeping face, the shape of her nose, the set of her mouth, the delicate arch of her eyebrows. All echoed his own. She does look like my mother, he admitted softly. The anger Maya had carried, for 2 years, simmered just beneath the surface. I don't want anything from you, she said. We've managed on our own this far. I just thought you should know you have a daughter. Nathan shook his head, confusion evident. If you didn't want anything, why tell me at all? Why not just continue as you have been? Maya hadn't expected that question. She gazed down at Sophia, gathering her thoughts. Because someday she'll ask about her father. And I don't want to lie to her. I don't want her to think she wasn't important enough for you to know about. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. The choice of what to do with this information is yours. But now you can't say you never knew. The unflinching honesty in her gaze made Nathan look away first. He stared at the seat in front of him, his hands clasped tightly together. How have you managed? He asked after a long pause. Financially. My parents help when they can. I work at a marketing firm in Phoenix, doing basic content creation. Nights and weekends, I wait tables at Rosalita's cantina near campus. My neighbor watches Sophia during shifts. She recited the facts without self-pity. It's not the life I planned, but we're okay. Nathan absorbed this information, visibly struggling with the image of his child being raised in such precarious circumstances while he lived in his Beacon Hill townhouse with its dedicated nursery for Grace. I'll help, he said decisively. Child support at minimum, education fund, health care. And what will you tell your wife? Maya asked. Your adopted daughter? Your board of directors? The business publications that love to profile your perfect executive life? The questions hit their mark. Nathan's expression revealed he hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'll figure it out. Sophia deserves support. And what about you, Nathan? What do you want beyond financial obligations? Do you want to be her father or just her banker? Maya's question hung between them. Heavier than the turbulent air outside, he looked genuinely pained. I don't know that either. I need time to think. A flight attendant approached with the beverage cart, her practiced smile faltering slightly as she sensed the tension between them. Another round of drinks? Nathan ordered a double scotch this time. Maya asked for ginger ale, suddenly aware of how dry her throat had become during their conversation. After the attendant moved on, Nathan took a long swallow of his drink, wincing at the burn. I've made a mess of things, he said quietly. Maya couldn't argue with that assessment. She sipped her ginger ale, giving him space to continue. Rebecca and I tried for years to have a child, he said, staring into his drink. Multiple rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages. It nearly destroyed her, destroyed us both, really. When we finally decided to adopt, it was like finding light after years in darkness. He looked up, his expression haunted. How do I tell her that? While we were struggling, while she was putting herself through hormonal hell, I fathered a child with someone else. Maya felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for Rebecca. The woman had suffered, had rebuilt her marriage, had finally become a mother through adoption, and now this revelation threatened to unravel everything. The timing, Nathan continued almost to himself. When did you find out you were pregnant? 3 weeks after you left, Maya replied. I was already dealing with morning sickness when I tried to reach you. He closed his eyes briefly. That was when Rebecca and I were attempting reconciliation. The emails you sent, they arrived during our intensive marriage counseling. My assistant must have seen them and... He shook his head. Not that it excuses anything. No, Maya agreed. It doesn't. Sophia stirred in her sleep, making tiny sounds. Of distress, Maya adjusted her position, rubbing gentle circles on her back until she settled again. You're good with her, Nathan observed, echoing his earlier comment, but now with new understanding. I had to be, Maya replied simply. Nathan reached for his phone, then hesitated. Maya, I'd like to have your contact information. Not to brush this off, but so we can talk more once we've both had time to process. This isn't a conversation that should happen entirely on a 5-hour flight. Maya nodded reluctantly. She pulled a pen from her bag and wrote her phone number and email on a napkin. This time, don't disappear, she said, handing it to him. He accepted it with a nod, tucking it carefully into his wallet. I won't. He hesitated, then added, and your interview at Horizon should be based solely on my qualifications, Maya interrupted firmly. I don't want a position out of guilt or obligation. Of course, Nathan agreed, looking slightly ashamed that she thought he might suggest otherwise. I only meant that you shouldn't worry about any complications. This situation between us won't affect your candidacy. Maya nodded, appreciating at least that much. The opportunity at Horizon could change everything for her and Sophia, providing stability they desperately needed. They fell into uneasy silence, both watching Sophia sleep. The reality of their situation settled around them like a heavy fog. A successful CEO with a picture-perfect family, a struggling single mother trying to finish her education, and the innocent baby connecting them forever. After several minutes, Nathan spoke again. May I hold her, now that I know? His voice contained a vulnerability Maya hadn't heard from him before. She hesitated, protective instincts flaring, but something in his expression, a mixture of awe and regret, made her relent. Carefully, she transferred the sleeping Sophia to his arms. Nathan cradled her with reverence, studying her features with new awareness. "Hello, Sophia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your—" He faltered, unable to say the word father aloud yet, the reality still too fresh, too overwhelming. Maya watched them, her emotions a complex tangle of resentment, vindication, and an unexpected tenderness at seeing them together for the first time. Whatever happened next, at least this moment existed, Sophia being held by the father who hadn't known she existed until an hour ago. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing they were beginning their initial descent into Boston. 3 hours had passed, in what felt like both an eternity and an instant. "We're landing soon," Maya said unnecessarily, reaching for Sophia. "I should change her before we arrive." Nathan reluctantly handed the baby back, their fingers brushing. "In the exchange, Maya," he said, as she stood to head to the lavatory, "thank you for telling me. You could have walked away when you recognized me. You could have kept this secret." She paused, looking down at him. "I didn't do it for you," she said quietly. "I did it for her." As Maya made her way down the aisle with Sophia, Nathan remained, in his seat, staring at the napkin with her contact information, wondering how one flight could completely transform the life he thought he had carefully rebuilt. The descent into Boston Logan International Airport was smoother than the turbulent flight had been. Outside the small oval windows, the city lights glimmered against the dark water of the harbor, a constellation of human ambition and achievement. Maya returned from the lavatory with a freshly changed Sophia, who was now wide awake and curiously taking in her surroundings with wide brown eyes. Nathan straightened in his seat when they returned, his posture betraying his tension. The easy corporate confidence he had projected at the beginning of the flight had been replaced by something more vulnerable and uncertain. He had used the minutes of Maya's absence to send a text message to his driver, changing the pickup arrangements. Now he slipped his phone back into his pocket and watched as Maya settled Sophia on her lap. "She seems fascinated by everything," Nathan observed, offering his finger to Sophia, who grabbed it with surprising strength, bringing a reluctant smile to his face. "She's always been curious," Maya replied, adjusting the baby's headband. "The daycare workers say she's advanced for her age, always watching, always reaching for things." Pride colored her voice, the natural pride of a mother who saw infinite potential in her child. Nathan heard it and felt a twinge of something unfamiliar, regret for the milestones he had missed, the first smile, the first laugh, the first time she rolled over or reached for a toy. "Maya," he began hesitantly as the plane's wheels touched, down on the runway with a gentle bump. "Where are you staying in Boston?" "With my second cousin in Dorchester," she answered, distracted by securing Sophia for landing. "Maria. We've never actually met in person, but she's my mum's cousin's daughter. She offered her couch when she heard I had an interview." Nathan frowned. "A couch? With a baby?" Maya shot him a look that clearly communicated this was not the worst accommodation she'd had to accept. "It's only for 3 nights. My interview is tomorrow morning and I fly back on Sunday, assuming I don't get the job. If I do, I'll have to figure out more permanent arrangements." The plane taxied to the gate, and passengers around them immediately reached for their phones, the cabin, filling with the soft pings of devices reconnecting to the world. Nathan seemed to be weighing something in his mind, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I have a proposition," he said finally, his voice low enough that only Maya could hear. "Stellatech keeps a corporate apartment near the office for visiting executives and clients. It's empty this weekend. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, walking distance to Horizon's offices, where your interview will be." He met her eyes directly. "I'd like you and Sophia to stay there instead of on your cousin's couch." Maya's immediate instinct was to refuse. She had managed without his help for 2 years. Accepting his offer now felt like compromising her hard-won independence. But as Sophia squirmed in her arms, she thought practically about navigating public transit with a baby and luggage, about trying to prepare for a crucial interview while sleeping on a stranger's couch. "Why?" she asked simply. Nathan seemed to understand the real question behind her query. "Not out of guilt," he replied, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because it will give us more time to discuss everything." He gestured vaguely toward Sophia. "And because you deserve to be well rested for your interview." The overhead speakers announced they could begin deplaning. Around them, passengers stood and began retrieving bags from overhead compartments, creating a shuffling dance of impatience in the narrow aisle. "No strings attached," Nathan added, when Maya didn't immediately respond. "The keycard will be at the front desk under your name. You don't even have to see me if you don't want to." Maya considered his offer as she gathered Sophia's blanket and toys, tucking them into the diaper bag. The thought of a private space, a real bed, a quiet environment to prepare for her interview was tempting, and the prospect of further conversation with Nathan, difficult as it might be, was necessary if they were to figure out what role, if any, he would play in Sophia's life. "All right," she agreed finally. "Thank you." Relief flickered across Nathan's face. He pulled out his phone and tapped rapidly, then showed her the screen with an address in Back Bay. "I'll have groceries and baby essentials delivered. Is there anything specific you need?" The question was so practical, so paternal, that Maya felt momentarily disoriented. This was the same man who had vanished from her life, yet here he was, asking about baby supplies. Diapers, size 2, sensitive skin formula. She likes pureed sweet potatoes and applesauce. She paused, then added more softly, "And coffee for me. Strong." Nathan nodded, making notes in his phone. "I'll have everything there within the hour." They deplaned in silence, Maya carrying Sophia while Nathan, in a gesture that surprised her, insisted on handling her carry-on, along with his own sleek leather briefcase. In the terminal, the contrast between them was even more pronounced. Nathan in his tailored suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Maya in her worn jeans and sensible sweater. Sophia bundled against the spring chill in a hand-me-down jacket from a church donation bin. At baggage claim, Nathan retrieved Maya's single suitcase, a faded navy blue with a fraying handle, before she could reach for it. "My driver's waiting outside," he said. "Let me give you a ride to the apartment." Maya hesitated again. Each acceptance of his help felt like a step into unknown territory. "What about your wife? Won't she be expecting you?" A shadow crossed Nathan's face. "Rebecca is at a conference in Chicago until tomorrow evening. She took Grace with her. Her mother went along to help." He checked his watch. "I was planning to work late at the office anyway. No one will think anything of it if I make sure you get settled safely." The pragmatic part of Maya's mind recognized the logic in accepting. It was nearly 10 p.m. She was in an unfamiliar city with a baby, and the alternative was navigating public transportation to Dorchester to sleep on a stranger's couch. "Okay," she agreed, "but just to the apartment." Nathan nodded, his relief evident as he led them through the terminal toward the exit. Outside, the April air was crisp with a lingering winter chill. Boston's weather was several degrees colder than Phoenix, and Maya pulled Sophia's jacket more snugly around her, shielding her from the breeze. A black Audi SUV idled at the curb, and the driver stepped out immediately upon seeing Nathan, taking the luggage and stowing it efficiently, while Nathan helped Maya and Sophia into the back seat. The luxury vehicle featured a built-in car seat, which Maya noted with surprise. "We keep it installed for clients with children," Nathan explained, seeing her expression. "Safety regulations." The drive from Logan to Back Bay took them through the Sumner Tunnel and into the glittering heart of Boston. Maya stared out the window, taking in the historic architecture mixed with modern skyscrapers. Sophia, securely buckled in the car seat between them, babbled happily at the moving lights outside. "She seems to like Boston," Nathan commented, watching. Sophia with undisguised fascination. "She likes movement and lights," Maya replied. "In Phoenix, she always calms down when we drive at night. Sometimes when she's fussy, I just put her in the car and drive around the block a few times." Nathan absorbed this information like a man collecting precious data points about a subject of vital importance. "What else does she like?" The question opened a floodgate. Maya found herself sharing details she'd never expected to tell Sophia's father. How she loved being sung to, but only certain songs. How she had a favorite stuffed giraffe she couldn't sleep without. How she always smiled when she saw birds. Outside the window of their small apartment, Nathan listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed his genuine interest. By the time they arrived at the corporate apartment building, a sleek high-rise with a uniformed doorman, the awkwardness between them had softened slightly, replaced by their shared fascination with the small person they had created. The doorman held the door as Nathan escorted them inside to the front desk, where he spoke quietly to the attendant. A key card was produced and handed to Maya, along with a professional smile. "Apartment 1402, the attendant informed her. "The elevators are to your right. Is there anything else you need this evening, Ms. Rodriguez?" The formality of the interaction, the deference shown to her, these were unfamiliar experiences for Maya, who was accustomed to being overlooked or dismissed. She shook her head, thanking the attendant as Nathan gathered her suitcase again. The elevator ride to the 14th floor was silent, the soft classical music filling the space between them. Sophia's eyes were growing heavy, the excitement of the day finally catching up to her. The apartment door opened to reveal a spacious, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. Maya stepped inside, momentarily overwhelmed by the luxury. The gleaming hardwood floors, the designer furniture, the state-of-the-art kitchen with marble countertops. "The groceries should be delivered soon," Nathan said, setting her suitcase by the couch. "The second bedroom is through there," he pointed to a hallway, "and it has a portable crib. I had them set it up when I texted from the plane." Maya turned to him, Sophia now drowsing against her shoulder. "Thank you," she said simply. The words felt inadequate for the complexity of the situation, but they were sincere. Nathan nodded, then reached out tentatively to touch Sophia's small hand. "Good night, Sophia," he whispered. The baby reflexively curled her fingers around his, creating a connection that visibly affected him. He cleared his throat, blinking rapidly. "I should go. You both need rest." He stepped back, retrieving his briefcase from where he'd set it by the door. "Maya, he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with what to say. "We'll talk tomorrow? After your interview, perhaps?" Maya nodded, too exhausted for further discussion tonight. "I'll text you when it's done." Nathan reached for the door handle, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, not just for tonight or for the past 2 years, but for what happens next. However this unfolds, people will get hurt. I never intended that." "Intentions don't count for much, Nathan," Maya replied softly. "Only actions." He nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. "Good night, then." After he left, Maya stood in the center of the luxurious apartment, Sophia sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, and tried to process the extraordinary turn her life had taken in just a few hours. The man who had disappeared when she needed him most had re-entered her life as suddenly as he had vanished from it. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. She carried Sophia to the second bedroom, where a top-of-the-line portable crib waited, complete with fresh linens and a small nightlight. As she laid her daughter down, Maya wondered what tomorrow would bring. Not just the job interview that had brought her to Boston, but the conversation with Nathan that would determine what kind of father he chose to be. Outside the window, Boston's lights twinkled like earthbound, stars beautiful and distant. Maya placed Sophia's favorite giraffe beside her, watching her daughter's peaceful breathing for a moment before whispering, "Sweet dreams, mi corazón. Tomorrow is a new day." Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the corporate apartment, transforming the sleek space into a sun-drenched sanctuary. Maya stood at the kitchen island, sipping coffee from a porcelain mug while reviewing her presentation notes one final time. She had been awake since 5, preparing for the interview that could change everything for her and Sophia. The promised groceries had arrived last night shortly after Nathan left. Not just the requested diapers and formula, but an abundance of fresh produce, premium coffee, and several prepared meals. There were even toys for Sophia, still in their packaging, a silent acknowledgement of all the birthdays and milestones Nathan had missed. Maya's interview outfit, a modest navy blazer and pencil skirt she had carefully packed, hung pressed and ready in the bedroom. She had spent precious savings on the ensemble, recognizing the importance of first impressions. Now, hearing Sophia beginning to stir through the baby monitor, she set down her notes and moved toward the second bedroom. "Buenos dias, mi sol," Maya cooed as she entered, finding Sophia awake and babbling happily to her stuffed giraffe. The baby's face lit up at the sight of her mother, tiny arms reaching upward in a universal gesture of desire. Maya lifted her, inhaling the sweet scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "Today's a big day," she whispered, carrying Sophia to the changing table that had mysteriously appeared overnight, likely another of Nathan's arrangements. "Mama has her interview, and you get to spend time with your cousin Maria." The plan was for Maya to drop Sophia with her cousin in Dorchester before heading to Horizon Innovations for her 10 a.m. interview. Maria had sounded kind on the phone, if a bit surprised that Maya no longer needed accommodation. Maya had explained vaguely about a friend's offer of an empty apartment, unwilling to delve into the complicated truth. After feeding and dressing Sophia in her nicest outfit, a pale yellow dress with tiny embroidered flowers, Maya was gathering the diaper bag when her phone chimed with a text message. "Nathan, good morning. How are the accommodations?" Maya hesitated before responding. Their interaction felt surreal in the daylight, the emotional turbulence of their airplane conversation contrasting sharply with the mundane nature of his inquiry. "Maya, everything is fine. Thank you." She paused, then added, "Maya, the extra supplies. We're very thoughtful." His response came quickly. "Nathan, I'm glad. About your childcare today, I've arranged for a professional sitter to come to the apartment if you'd prefer. Fully vetted by our HR department. No need to travel to Dorchester." Maya frowned at the phone. The offer was practical, even generous. But it also represented Nathan stepping into their lives and making decisions, something he had forfeited the right to do 2 years ago. "Maya, I've already arranged with my cousin, but thank you." Nathan, "Of course. Good luck today. They'd be fools not to hire you." Maya didn't reply, slipping the phone into her purse as she continued preparing for the day. The message notification blinked again a few minutes later. "Nathan, would 7 p.m. work to meet and talk? I can come to the apartment. Rebecca won't be back until tomorrow." The mention of his wife sent a complicated ripple of emotions through Maya. She had spent 2 years picturing Nathan as simply selfish and irresponsible. Learning about Rebecca, their fertility struggles, and their adoption of Grace had added layers of complexity to the situation that Maya was still processing. "Maya, 7 works. I should be back from Dorchester by then, with Sophia secured in her carrier." And the diaper bag packed, Maya took one final look at her reflection in the entryway mirror. The woman who gazed back appeared far more composed than she felt. Hair neatly styled, makeup subtle but professional, outfit crisp and appropriate. Only her eyes betrayed the emotional turmoil beneath the surface. "We can do this," she whispered to Sophia, who responded with a gummy smile. The ride to Dorchester was a study in contrasts. From the gleaming high-rises of Back Bay, the Uber traveled through neighborhoods that grew progressively less affluent. Maya watched the transition with interest, noting the vibrant murals and community gardens that brightened some of the more modest areas. Maria's apartment was in a well-maintained but aging three-decker. She greeted Maya with enthusiastic hugs and immediate cooing over Sophia, her warmth dissolving any awkwardness between virtual strangers who shared blood ties. "She's beautiful, Prima," Maria exclaimed, taking Sophia into her arms. "She looks just like you around the eyes, but that chin, that must be from her father, no?" Maya managed a tight smile. "Yes, it is." "Men," Maria said with a dismissive wave of her hand, apparently interpreting Maya's response as confirmation of an absent father. "Their loss. We women are stronger anyway." She bounced Sophia gently. "Aren't we, Pequeñita?" "Yes, we are," relieved. By Maria's easy manner and obvious comfort with children, Maya reviewed the care instructions and promised to return by 6. With a final kiss to Sophia's forehead, she headed back to the waiting Uber, simultaneously lighter for having her hands free and heavier for leaving a piece of her heart behind. Horizon Innovations occupied 3 floors of a renovated textile mill in the Seaport district. The brick exterior maintained its historic character, while the interior had been transformed into an airy, modern workspace with exposed beams and abundant natural light. Maya arrived 20 minutes early, using the time to center herself in the sleek reception area. "Ms. Rodriguez?" A friendly voice broke into her thoughts. "I'm Diane Kim, HR manager. We're ready for you a bit early, if that works." Maya stood, smoothing her skirt. "That would be great, thank you." Following Diane through the open office space, Maya noticed the diverse workforce and collaborative environment, values she had researched and admired about the company. Small groups gathered around whiteboards or lounged in casual meeting areas. The atmosphere professional but relaxed. "We're excited about your background in multicultural marketing," Diane commented as they walked. "Especially your research on digital engagement with Hispanic communities. Our new project has that exact focus." They reached a glass-walled conference room where 3 people waited: an older gentleman with silver hair, a younger woman with a bright purple streak in her otherwise professional bob, and a man about Maya's age with a friendly smile. "Our interview panel today," Diane explained. "Thomas Chen, Creative Director, Ojisha Washington, Digital Strategy Lead, and Carlos Mendez, Senior Marketing Manager, who would be your direct supervisor." Conspicuously absent was any mention of Rebecca Wells, the HR Director. Maya wondered if Nathan had arranged this deliberately, or if his wife's conference trip had already been scheduled to preclude her involvement. The interview proceeded smoothly, Maya's preparation evident in her thoughtful responses and the polished presentation she delivered on multicultural marketing strategies. The panel seemed genuinely impressed, particularly when she referenced specific campaigns she had analyzed during her studies. "Just one area of concern," Thomas said, reviewing her resume. "The gap in your employment and education. You mentioned personal circumstances." Maya had anticipated this question, had rehearsed her answer carefully. "Yes, I became a mother last year. While it delayed the completion of my degree, it also gave me valuable perspective on work-life integration and time management. I've continued taking online courses and plan to complete my final credits this summer." Aisha nodded approvingly. "As a mother of 2 myself, I can appreciate that balance." Does your current employer offer flexibility for childcare? Limited. Flexibility, Maya admitted, which is one reason I'm particularly interested in Horizon's family-friendly policies. Carlos leaned forward. Speaking of which, if you were to accept a position with us, would relocation be an issue? We do offer remote work for certain days, but we value in-person collaboration for this role. The question Maya had been both expecting and dreading. If offered the position, could she uproot her life in Phoenix, leave her parents, her support network, her affordable apartment, come to Boston, where the cost of living would stretch her salary much thinner, but where Sophia might have a chance to know her father? I'm open to relocation, she answered carefully. Family considerations would need to be addressed, but I'm confident we could make it work with the right opportunity. The interview concluded with warm handshakes and promises to be in touch early next week. As Diane walked her back to reception, she said quietly, "Between us, they were very impressed. I wouldn't be surprised if you hear from us sooner rather." And then later, Maya thanked her, maintaining her professional composure until she reached the street outside. Only then did she allow herself a moment of pure, unbridled hope. The interview had gone well, exceptionally well. But even as professional possibilities expanded before her, personal complications loomed large. In a few hours, she would sit down with Nathan to discuss their daughter's future, and whatever decisions they reached would change all their lives. Irrevocably, the afternoon light was beginning to fade when Maya collected Sophia from Maria's apartment in Dorchester. Her cousin had clearly fallen in love with the baby, reluctantly handing her over with promises to babysit any time Maya needed. The offer was generous but premature. Maya still had no idea if Boston would become their home or remain just another city where dreams were briefly entertained. "How did the interview go?" Maria asked, helping Maya gather Sophia's things. "Better than I expected," Maya admitted, unable to suppress a small smile. "They seemed genuinely interested in my ideas." "Of course they were," Maria exclaimed with familial pride. "You're brilliant, Prima. They'd be loco not to hire you." The unconditional support, even from a relative she'd just met in person, warmed Maya's heart. It was this kind of family connection she'd be giving up if she relocated to Boston, though her parents could visit, and perhaps Maria would become a local support system. During the ride back to the corporate apartment, Maya checked her phone to find 2 missed calls from Nathan and a text message. "Nathan, running slightly late. Will be there by 7:30. Had the kitchen send up dinner for you and Sophia." Maya frowned at the notification. His ability to make arrangements, dinners, apartments, childcare, with a few taps on his phone, was a reminder of the vast chasm between their worlds. His wealth and influence allowed him to solve problems effortlessly, while she had spent 2 years stretching every dollar and minute to breaking point. The doorman greeted Maya by name when she arrived, informing her that dinner had been delivered and placed in the apartment. Sure enough, when she entered, the kitchen counter displayed an array of covered dishes emanating enticing aromas, along with a smaller container clearly meant for Sophia. After settling the baby in her high chair with some pureed vegetables, Maya opened the remaining containers to find a gourmet selection of Mediterranean dishes: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and a decadent-looking chocolate dessert. An accompanying note indicated the meal came from Athena's table, apparently one of Boston's premier restaurants. "Your father certainly doesn't do anything halfway," Maya murmured to Sophia, who responded by gleefully smashing a piece of sweet potato between her fingers. The luxury of the apartment, the catered meal, the doorman who knew her name, all of. It felt like a glimpse into an alternate reality where she hadn't spent the past 2 years struggling alone. It was seductive and disorienting simultaneously. Maya changed into more comfortable clothes, jeans and a simple blouse, before settling on the living room floor with Sophia, who was practicing her crawling skills with determined concentration. The plush area rug provided the perfect surface for tiny hands and knees to navigate, and Maya documented her daughter's progress with her phone camera, applauding each successful movement forward. At precisely 7:28, a knock sounded at the door. Maya scooped up Sophia and took a deep breath before answering. Nathan stood in the hallway, still dressed in his business attire, though he had removed his tie and unbuttoned his collar. He carried a sleek leather briefcase in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. "I hope I'm not interrupting dinner," he said, his eyes immediately going to Sophia, who studied him with open curiosity. "We've eaten," Maya replied, stepping back to allow him entry. "Thank you for the food." Nathan nodded, setting his briefcase down and offering the gift bag. "This is for Sophia. Nothing extravagant, just something I saw and thought she might like." Maya accepted the bag with slight hesitation. Inside was a soft, plush music box in the shape of a giraffe, a thoughtful echo of the stuffed giraffe Sophia already loved. "How did you know she likes giraffes?" Maya asked, genuinely surprised. Nathan looked slightly embarrassed. "You mentioned it on the plane when you were telling me what she likes. I was paying attention." The simple statement, "I was paying attention," carried more weight than perhaps he realized. For 2 years, Maya had assumed he hadn't cared enough to even read her emails. The idea that he had listened carefully during their brief conversation, had remembered specific details about Sophia's preferences, shifted something in her perception of him. "Thank you," she said quietly, handing the music box to Sophia, who immediately grabbed one of its soft ears. Nathan watched them for a moment, his expression unreadable. "How was your interview?" "It went well," Maya replied, moving to sit on the couch while keeping a watchful eye on Sophia, who was now examining her new toy with dedicated focus. "They seemed impressed with my presentation." "I'm not surprised," Nathan said, taking a seat across from her. "Your resume is exceptional, especially considering the circumstances." The praise felt genuine, free from the patronizing tone Maya had half expected. She nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't elaborate further. This conversation wasn't about her career prospects. "Nathan," she began, deciding to address the elephant in the room directly. "We need to discuss what happens next." With Sophia, he leaned forward, clasping his hands between his knees. "Yes, we do." He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about it all day. I've consulted with a lawyer about establishing paternity officially and setting up child support and a trust fund for her education." The business-like approach wasn't surprising, but it still stung. "Is that all you want? A financial arrangement?" Nathan looked startled. "No, of course not. But I thought it would be important to you. Security for Sophia." "It is," Maya acknowledged. "But she needs more than money, Nathan. She needs to know who her father is, or isn't. I need to know what to tell her when she's old enough to ask." The challenge in her tone was unmistakable. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect corporate styling. "I want to be in her life," he said finally. "I just don't know how to make that work with everything else. His marriage, his adopted daughter, his carefully constructed life that had no space allocated for an unexpected child with a woman he barely knew." "Have you told Rebecca?" Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. Nathan shook his head. "Not yet. She returns tomorrow evening. I wanted to speak with you first, to understand what you want before I upend everyone's lives." Sophia crawled over to Nathan's feet, pulling herself up to standing position using his pant leg as support. She looked up at him with a wide, toothless grin that never failed to melt Maya's heart. Apparently, it had a similar effect on Nathan, whose expression softened immediately. "Hello there," he said softly, reaching down to steady her. "You're quite the climber, aren't you?" Maya watched the interaction with conflicting emotions. There, was something both beautiful and painful in seeing Sophia connect so naturally with the father she had never known. "I think," Maya said carefully, "that we need to be honest with ourselves, with each other, and eventually with everyone else involved, including Rebecca." She met his gaze directly. "I won't be your secret, Nathan, and neither will Sophia." Nathan nodded slowly, his eyes still on the baby, now bouncing eagerly while holding his fingers. "You're right," he agreed. "No more secrets, no more hiding." He looked up at Maya, his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "I just don't know how to do this without hurting people I care about. Sometimes there's no way to avoid pain," Maya replied softly. "We just have to try to do what's right, especially for Sophia." As if recognizing her name, Sophia babbled happily, reaching up toward Nathan with complete trust. After a questioning glance at Maya, who nodded permission, he lifted the baby onto his lap. "She looks like my mother," he observed quietly, studying Sophia's features around the eyes, "and my sister as a baby." The comment was simple but profound, an acknowledgement of Sophia's place in a family tree she had never known, branches of heritage and history that were rightfully hers. Maya watched them together. The successful CEO and the baby he hadn't known existed until yesterday, and felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Sophia had fallen asleep on Nathan's chest, her tiny hand curled against his shirt button, her breathing deep and even. The unexpected intimacy of the moment left both adults speaking in hushed tones, their conversations circling around the central question neither could fully answer. What now? "I should put her to bed," Maya said finally, gently lifting the sleeping baby from Nathan's arms. He released Sophia reluctantly, his fingers lingering briefly on her small back. "She trusts easily," he observed, watching Maya cradle their daughter. "Is that normal at her age?" "Not always. The pediatrician says she's unusually social." Maya paused at the hallway. "Give me a few minutes." Nathan nodded, rising to stretch his legs, while Maya disappeared into the second bedroom. Left alone, he wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at Boston's illuminated skyline. His reflections stared back at him. Successful CEO, respected business leader, man with a perfect life that was about to change irrevocably. Tomorrow, Rebecca would return from Chicago with Grace. Tomorrow, he would have to tell his wife that during their separation 2 years ago, he had fathered a child with another woman. Tomorrow, the carefully reconstructed foundation of their marriage would be tested in ways he could barely imagine. Maya returned to find him still at the window, lost in thought. "She's out for the night, probably," she said, settling onto the couch. The flight tired her out. Nathan turned, his expression troubled. "Maya, I need to ask you something important." He returned to his seat across from her. "If you get this job at Horizon, would you consider moving to Boston?" "Not for me," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "For Sophia, so she could know both her parents." Maya had been expecting this question, had been turning it over in her mind all day. "It would depend on many things," she answered carefully. "The salary, for one. Boston is expensive, especially for a single mother." "I would help with housing," Nathan said immediately. "Child support would cover—" "I don't want to be dependent on you," Maya interrupted. "I've managed on my own for 2 years. I'm not looking for a handout." Nathan leaned back, studying her with newfound respect. "It's not a handout. It's my responsibility as her father." He paused. "But I understand your pride. We could structure it as a college fund instead, if that feels different." Maya appreciated his attempt to understand her perspective, even if he couldn't fully grasp what independence meant to someone who had fought for every opportunity. "That might work," she conceded, But there are other considerations. My parents are in Phoenix. They don't have much, but they've been my support system. And your wife, Rebecca, Nathan supplied, his expression clouding. Yes, that's the most complicated part. How do you think she'll react? Maya asked, genuinely curious about the woman who would inevitably become part of Sophia's extended family, for better or worse. Nathan sighed heavily. Honestly, I don't know. Rebecca is compassionate, fair-minded, but this, he gestured vaguely, our fertility struggles nearly destroyed us. Finding out I fathered a child during our separation, it could break her heart all over again. The pain in his voice was genuine, Maya realized. Whatever his failings, 2 years ago, he clearly loved his wife and feared hurting her. The situation was far more nuanced than the simple narrative of abandonment she had constructed in her mind. If it helps, Maya offered, I have no interest in disrupting your marriage. My only concern is Sophia having a relationship with her. Father, whatever form that takes. Nathan nodded gratefully. Thank you for that. He hesitated, then added, there's something else you should know. The timing of everything. When I met you, when Rebecca and I reconciled, it's more complicated than I explained on the plane. Maya tensed, unsure what new revelation was coming. When I returned to Boston after the Phoenix event, Rebecca had already filed divorce papers. We were legally separated. He leaned forward, eyes intent. I'm not excusing my behavior. I should have been honest about being married, separated or not. But I need you to know I wasn't having an affair. At least, not technically. Does that distinction matter now? Maya asked, more curious than accusatory. It might to Rebecca, Nathan replied, and to me, I suppose. I've never cheated on her, before or since. Those 2 weeks in Phoenix were during what I believed was the end of my marriage. Maya absorbed this information, recalibrating her understanding of their brief relationship. Why did you reconnect with her? Nathan's expression softened with memory. She called about finalizing the divorce settlement, but during that conversation, something changed. We both realized we still loved each other, that maybe we had given up too easily after the second miscarriage. His eyes met Maya's. I flew back to Boston the next day, and we agreed to try again. Marriage counseling, one last round of fertility treatments. When those failed too, we started the adoption process. The timeline aligned with Maya's desperate attempts to reach him. Her emails would have arrived during the fragile reconciliation period, when Nathan was focused entirely on rebuilding his marriage. I deleted my old email account, he continued, confirming her thoughts. Changed my number. We both wanted a clean slate, with nothing from our separation to complicate things. He ran a hand through his hair. I never imagined there might be someone important trying to reach me. The explanation didn't erase 2 years of struggle, but it offered context Maya hadn't previously considered. Nathan hadn't been maliciously ignoring her. He had been oblivious, focused on saving his marriage after believing it was beyond repair. I believe you, Maya said finally, but it doesn't change what happens next. Rebecca still needs to know about Sophia. Yes, Nathan agreed, and soon, before you make any decisions about the job or moving to Boston. He hesitated. Would you be willing to meet her? Not immediately, but eventually, if she's open to it. The request surprised Maya. You think that would help? I think it would be better than her imagining who you are, Nathan replied honestly. Rebecca values directness, and seeing you with Sophia might help her understand this isn't about us, you and me. It's about our daughter. Maya considered the proposal. Meeting Nathan's wife would be uncomfortable at best, potentially confrontational at worst. But if they were all going to be connected through Sophia for the next 18 years, establishing a civil relationship from the beginning made sense. I'd be willing, she agreed cautiously, if she wants to meet me. Relief flickered across Nathan's face. "Thank you. I can't predict how she'll react to any of this, but your willingness to meet helps." A notification chimed on Maya's phone. An email from Horizon Innovations. She hesitated, then opened it, scanning the contents quickly. "They want a second interview," she announced, surprised by the swift response. "Monday morning with the executive. A team." Nathan smiled, though the expression didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's excellent news. Monday gives us the weekend to sort through some of this." He glanced at his watch and stood reluctantly. "I should go. It's getting late and you both need rest." At the door, he paused. "May I come by tomorrow? To see Sophia again?" The request was tentative, almost shy, so different from the confident CEO who had first sat beside her on the plane. Maya nodded. "She usually wakes up around 7. You could join us for breakfast if you want." "I'd like that," Nathan said softly. He reached for the doorknob, then turned back. "Thank you, Maya, for telling me about her. You could have kept her a secret, and I would never have known what I was missing." After he left, Maya stood in the quiet apartment, processing the surreal quality of the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she had been a single mother in Phoenix, focused solely on an interview that might improve their circumstances. Now she was in Boston, contemplating a future where Sophia would know her father, where Maya herself might build. A career in a new city where 3 adults would need to navigate a complicated relationship for the sake of 2 innocent children. She moved to the window where Nathan had stood earlier, gazing out at the glittering city that might become their home. The path forward was uncertain, filled with potential heartache and difficult conversations. But for the first time in 2 years, Maya didn't feel alone in her journey as Sophia's parent. Whether that was a comfort or a complication remained to be seen. Saturday morning arrived with gentle spring sunshine filtering through the apartment windows. Maya awoke to Sophia's happy babbling through the baby monitor, the familiar morning sounds grounding her in a moment of normalcy amid the extraordinary circumstances of their visit to Boston. She found her daughter sitting up in the portable crib, conversing animatedly with her stuffed giraffe. "Good morning, sunshine," Maya said, lifting Sophia into her arms. The baby smelled of sleep and innocence, her hair forming wild curls that Maya smoothed with gentle fingers. After a quick diaper change and dressing Sophia in a cheerful yellow romper, Maya checked her phone. A text from Nathan had arrived at 6:15 a.m. "Nathan, on my way with breakfast. Hope that's still okay?" Maya replied with a simple affirmative, then moved through the apartment, straightening pillows and gathering baby toys with the strange nervousness of someone preparing for a guest who was both intimately connected and fundamentally a stranger. At precisely 7 o'clock, a knock sounded at the door. Nathan stood in the hallway, holding a bakery box and a carrier with 3 coffee cups. He had abandoned his corporate uniform for casual weekend attire, dark jeans and a soft grey sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "I wasn't sure what you'd like," he said, setting the items on the kitchen counter, "so I brought an assortment. The 3rd coffee is hot chocolate, actually, for when Maria joins us. You mentioned she might come by?" Maya nodded, surprised he had remembered and thoughtful enough to include her cousin. "She's stopping by around 9 to see the apartment. She couldn't believe I had a friend with a place like this." Nathan winced slightly at the description. Friend, but didn't correct her. His attention had already shifted to Sophia, who was watching him curiously from her high chair, a piece of banana clutched in her tiny fist. "Good morning, Sophia," he said softly, crouching to her eye level. "Do you remember me?" The baby studied him seriously before breaking into a wide, gummy smile and offering him her partially squished banana. Nathan laughed, accepting the soggy gift with appropriate solemnity. "Thank you. That's very generous." Maya watched their interaction while pouring coffee into proper mugs. There was something undeniably right about seeing them together. The same shaped eyes, the same curious expression when encountering something new. Nature had stamped her mark clearly, creating connections that no absence could erase. "She likes you," Maya observed, setting Nathan's coffee beside him. "The feeling is mutual," he replied, never taking his eyes off Sophia. "I keep thinking about everything I've missed. Her birth, first smile, first time sitting up." The regret in his voice sounded genuine, prompting Maya to offer a small kindness. "I have videos, not professional or anything, just phone clips of different milestones." Nathan looked up, hope brightening his features. "Really? You'd share those with me?" Maya nodded, pulling out her phone and opening the photo gallery. "This was her first real laugh," she said, playing a clip of 2-month-old Sophia giggling while Maya made silly faces off camera. "And here's when she first rolled over." They spent the next half hour huddled over Maya's phone, Nathan absorbing each precious moment with rapt attention, asking questions about every detail. His genuine interest in these mundane aspects of Sophia's development softened something in Maya's heart. "I miss so much," he murmured as the gallery reached recent videos. "I can never get that time back." "No," Maya agreed gently, "but you're here now." The simple statement hung between them, carrying more significance than its 4 words might suggest. Nathan looked at her, then at Sophia, who was happily mashing bits of pastry between her fingers. "Have you thought about what happens after your interview?" he asked carefully. "If they offer you the position?" Maya sipped her coffee, buying time to organize her thoughts. "I'd want to negotiate remote work for the first few months, to properly transition from Phoenix, find a place to live here that I can afford. I told you I'd help with—" "I know," Maya interrupted, "and I appreciate it, but this needs to be sustainable on my own income too. I don't want to be dependent on your support, only for something to change." Nathan studied her thoughtfully. "You don't quite trust that I'll stick around, do you?" The directness of the question caught Maya off guard. "Can you blame me?" she asked, not unkindly. "We barely know each other, and your life is complicated." "It's about to get more complicated," Nathan acknowledged, glancing at his watch. "Rebecca's flight lands at 5. I'm picking her and Grace up at the airport." He looked back at Maya, his expression grave. "I'm telling her everything tonight." The statement hung heavily in the air between them. Maya realized that somewhere across the country, Rebecca Wells was boarding a plane with her adopted daughter, completely unaware that her life was about to be upended. "Are you sure tonight is the right time?" Maya asked. "She'll be tired from traveling with a baby." Nathan shook his head. "There's no right time for news like this, and I can't keep it from her, not even for a day. Not with you both here in Boston." He looked directly at Maya. "She deserves the truth, however painful." The principled stance increased Maya's respect for him marginally. Whatever his past mistakes, Nathan seemed determined to handle the present situation with integrity. Sophia broke the serious moment by loudly dropping her sippy cup, then laughing at the resulting clatter. Both adults smiled reflexively at her joy, the tension easing slightly. "Whatever happens," Nathan said, retrieving the cup, "I want you to know I'm committed to being Sophia's father. Whether that's from across the country or here in Boston, whether Rebecca can accept it or not, that won't change." The promise was simple but profound. Maya nodded, allowing herself to believe just slightly that perhaps Sophia might have what Maya had always wanted for her, a father who chose to be present, even when it wasn't easy or convenient. "One day at a time," she said softly, watching, as Nathan gently wiped pastry crumbs from Sophia's cheeks. Outside the windows of the high-rise apartment, Boston continued its Saturday morning rhythm, unaware that in this sleek kitchen, 3 lives were being reconfigured around one small truth. The baby who had cried on a flight from Phoenix to Boston belonged to both the struggling young mother and the successful CEO who had whispered unwittingly, "Daddy's here." Sunday morning dawned with a gentle rain tapping against the windows of the corporate apartment. Maya sat curled on the couch, clutching her coffee mug with both hands as she stared at her silent phone. It had been 14 hours since Nathan left to meet Rebecca and Grace at the airport. 14 hours since he had promised to tell his wife the truth about Sophia. The night had passed slowly, with Maya jumping at every notification sound, expecting news of how the conversation had unfolded. But her phone remained stubbornly quiet, leaving her imagination to fill the void with scenarios ranging from cautiously optimistic to catastrophic. Sophia played contentedly on the floor nearby, stacking colorful blocks Nathan had brought yesterday morning. The baby seemed to sense nothing amiss, her world still simple and immediate: hunger, comfort, sleep, play. Maya envied that simplicity, that freedom from the weight of adult consequences and complications, just as she was considering a second cup of coffee. Her phone finally lit up with Nathan's name. Maya's heart leaped into her throat as she answered. "Hello? Maya." Nathan's voice sounded rough, as if he hadn't slept. "Sorry for not calling sooner. It's been—" He trailed off, apparently unable to find adequate words. "How did she take it?" Maya asked quietly, moving to the kitchen where Sophia couldn't hear her tone. A heavy sigh came through the line. "About as well as could be expected, which is to say, not well." There was a rustling sound, like he was moving to a more private location. "She's hurt, angry, confused, all the things anyone would be." Maya closed her eyes briefly. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but sincere. She had never wished pain on Rebecca, a woman who had already endured so much in her journey to motherhood. "She wants a paternity test," Nathan continued, his tone carefully neutral. "Not because she doesn't believe me, but because she needs official confirmation to process everything." "That's reasonable," Maya agreed. It was the same suggestion she had made on the plane. Scientific proof would remove any lingering doubts for everyone involved. "There's more," Nathan said after a brief hesitation. "She wants to meet you and Sophia." The request surprised Maya. "Now, today, if possible. She says she can't begin to think about what happens next until she sees you both in person." Another pause. "I told her it would be up to you." Maya glanced at Sophia, who had abandoned her blocks in favor of examining the tassels on a decorative pillow. The idea of meeting Rebecca, a confrontation she had assumed would happen much later if at all, sent waves of anxiety through her stomach. "Where?" she asked finally. "I don't think a public place would be appropriate for this conversation." "Rebecca suggested our home," Nathan replied. "We have a small garden that's private, and Grace will be napping this afternoon. Around 2? The thought of entering their home, seeing the life Nathan had built with his wife, perhaps glimpses of the nursery they had prepared for their adopted daughter, felt invasive. Yet Maya understood Rebecca's need to have this difficult conversation on her own territory, where she might feel some sense of control in an uncontrollable situation. "Okay," she agreed softly. "Text me the address." After ending the call, Maya sat motionless, absorbing the reality of what was to come. In a few hours, she would come face to face with the woman whose life had unknowingly intersected with hers 2 years ago, connected by their love for the same man and now by the children who would forever link them together. She looked at Sophia, peacefully unaware of the emotional complexities swirling around her existence. "What do you wear to meet your father's wife?" Maya whispered, attempting humor to calm her nerves. The question hung unanswered in the quiet apartment as she moved to the bedroom to select an outfit, something respectful, non-threatening, appropriate for a meeting that would inevitably be painful for everyone involved. Outside, the rain continued its gentle percussion against the windows, nature's soundtrack to the gathering storm of human emotions that would soon break in a garden in Beacon Hill. where three adults would attempt to forge a path forward for the sake of two children who deserved nothing less than their very best efforts. Maya lifted Sophia into her arms, drawing strength from her daughter's innocent warmth. "Whatever happens," she promised softly, "I'll make sure you're okay. We all will." It was a promise she desperately hoped they could keep. The Wells home in Beacon Hill was exactly as Maya had imagined it, a graceful brownstone with gleaming windows and a discreet brass plaque beside the door displaying the house number. Standing on the sidewalk with Sophia in her arms, Maya took a deep breath to steady herself before climbing the short flight of steps. Nathan answered her knock immediately, as if he'd been waiting by the door. His expression was a careful mask of neutrality, though the shadows under his eyes revealed a sleepless night. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly, stepping back to let them enter. His gaze lingered on Sophia, who was wide-eyed at the new surroundings. "She looks beautiful." Maya had dressed Sophia in a simple pale blue dress with tiny embroidered flowers, her wild curls tamed with a matching headband. The outfit was the nicest in Sophia's limited wardrobe, purchased on sale for a cousin's christening several months ago. "Rebecca is in the garden," Nathan continued, leading them through an elegantly appointed living room. Family photos lined the mantel, Nathan and a striking auburn-haired woman on their wedding day, the same woman holding a baby with Asian features. The three of them in what appeared to be a formal adoption ceremony. The garden was small but meticulously maintained, a quiet oasis in the heart of the city. Stone pavers created a path through carefully tended flower beds, leading to a sitting area where a woman stood with her back to them, shoulders rigid with tension. Rebecca Wells turned at the sound of their approach. Her beauty was understated, but unmistakable. High cheekbones, intelligent green eyes, auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore casual weekend clothes, jeans and a lightweight sweater that somehow looked elegant on her slender frame. Her gaze went immediately to Sophia, widening slightly as she took in the baby's features. Maya could almost see the mental comparison happening, noting Nathan's eyes, his chin, the undeniable genetic connection that linked this child to her husband. "Hello, Maya," Rebecca said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." The civility was unexpected. Maya had prepared herself for anger, accusation, even hostility, not this controlled composure that seemed to require tremendous effort. "Thank you for having us," Maya replied, equally formal. Sophia squirmed in her arms, reaching toward a colorful flower nearby. "This is Sophia." Rebecca nodded, her eyes never leaving the baby. "She looks like you, except around the eyes." The unspoken "she has Nathan's eyes" hung in the air between them. An awkward silence fell, broken only by Sophia's curious babbling. Nathan gestured to the garden furniture, a small table with 3 chairs. "Should we sit?" They arranged themselves. In a triangle, Maya keeping Sophia on her lap, though the baby clearly wanted to explore the fascinating new environment. Nathan sat between the two women, his discomfort evident in the way he repeatedly adjusted his position. "I asked you here because I needed to see you both," Rebecca began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, "to make this real in my mind. Nathan told me everything. The business trip to Phoenix, your brief relationship during our separation, the emails you sent that never reached him." She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I won't pretend this isn't painful for me. It is. But I also understand that none of this is Sophia's fault. She deserves to know her father." The maturity of the statement took Maya by surprise. She had expected recrimination, not this measured rationality that clearly cost Rebecca dearly to maintain. "Thank you," Maya said softly. "I want you to know I never intended to disrupt your family. When I recognized Nathan on the plane, I almost said nothing, But Sophia deserves the truth, even if it's complicated. Rebecca nodded, her gaze shifting to the baby. May I hold her? The request hung heavily in the garden air. Maya hesitated, not out of reluctance to let Rebecca hold Sophia, but from surprise at the direction the conversation had taken. She had expected boundaries to be established, legal arrangements to be discussed, not this intimate request that somehow cut through the formality of their interaction. Of course, Maya said finally, rising to bring Sophia to Rebecca. The moment the baby was settled in Rebecca's arms, something shifted in the atmosphere. Rebecca studied Sophia's face with an expression Maya couldn't quite decipher. Pain mixed with wonder, grief intertwined with reluctant affection. "Hello, Sophia," Rebecca said softly. The baby reached up to touch her cheek with curious fingers, drawing a small, sad smile from the woman. "You look so much like the ultrasound pictures of the baby we lost," she whispered, so quietly Maya barely caught the words. Nathan's sharp intake of breath suggested he had heard too. He reached out, placing a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder. But Rebecca looked up at him, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "It's not fair to resent her, or Maya. You both thought we were over. I'd filed the divorce papers, if things had gone differently." She couldn't finish the thought. Maya felt her own eyes fill with tears. The woman sitting across from her had suffered losses she could only imagine. Failed fertility treatments, miscarriages, the death of dreams she had nurtured. Yet here she sat, holding the child her husband had fathered with another woman, somehow finding the grace to see Sophia as a person deserving of love rather than a symbol of betrayal. "We need to find a way forward," Rebecca continued gently, bouncing Sophia, who had begun to fuss. "For Grace's sake as well as Sophia's, they're connected now, whether we planned it or not." In that moment, with sunlight filtering through the garden trees, and three adults united by their love for two innocent children, Maya glimpsed a possible future. One more complex, but also more generous than she had dared to imagine when she first recognized Nathan on that turbulent flight. Monday morning arrived with startling clarity, sunshine streaming through the corporate apartment windows as if determined to brighten the momentous day ahead. Maya stood before the bathroom mirror, applying a final touch of mascara while mentally rehearsing answers to potential interview questions. Her navy blazer hung pressed and ready on the bedroom door, a symbol of the professional identity she had fought to maintain through 2 years of single motherhood. Yesterday's meeting with Rebecca had ended better than she could have reasonably expected. After the initial emotional breakthrough in the garden, they had moved inside, where Rebecca had introduced Maya to 7-month-old Grace, a beautiful baby with almond-shaped eyes and a shy smile. The two infants had studied each other with solemn curiosity before Sophia had offered Grace her stuffed giraffe, a gesture of goodwill that had brought unexpected tears to all 3 adults. Before Maya left, Rebecca had taken her aside for a private conversation while Nathan entertained the babies in the living room. "I want you to know," Rebecca had said, her voice low but steady, "that whatever you decide about the job at Horizon will make this work. Nathan needs to be part of Sophia's life, and I won't stand in the way of that." The generosity of spirit behind those words had left Maya momentarily speechless. When she finally found her voice, she had asked the question foremost in her mind. "How can you be so understanding about all this?" Rebecca's smile had been tinged with sadness. "Don't mistake composure for ease, Maya. This is incredibly painful for me. But I've learned through losing 2 pregnancies and the adoption process that life rarely follows the path we expect." She had glanced toward the living room, where their unlikely family tableau was unfolding. "Grace deserves a father who models integrity, even when it's difficult. And Sophia deserves to know her father. The rest we'll figure out day by day." Now, as Maya fastened small pearl earrings a graduation gift from her parents. She reflected on how differently this trip to Boston had unfolded from her expectations. She had come seeking only a job opportunity, a chance to better provide. For Sophia, instead, she had found the missing piece of her daughter's heritage and the beginning of what might become an unconventional but functional family structure. A soft knock at the door broke through her thoughts. She checked her watch, still 45 minutes before Maria was due to arrive for babysitting duties during the interview. Through the peephole, she was surprised to see Nathan, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, his expression tentative. She opened the door, immediately concerned. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Everything's fine," he assured her quickly. "I just wanted to wish you luck in person." He held out a small gift bag. "And to bring you this." Maya accepted the bag, her curiosity overcoming her instinct to refuse gifts. Inside was a sleek leather portfolio embossed with her initials. "For your interview," Nathan explained. "It's the same brand Horizon executives use. A small advantage, perhaps." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her. "Thank you. That's very kind." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken questions about their future. Nathan broke it first, his voice taking on the decisive tone she imagined he used in board meetings. "Rebecca and I talked late into the night," he said. "About Sophia, about Grace, about how to make this situation work for everyone." He met her eyes directly. "If you get this job, and I hope you do, we want to help you relocate, not with strings attached, but as Sophia's family." Maya's automatic resistance to assistance faltered in the face of his sincerity. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we'd like to offer you the garden apartment in our home," he said carefully. "It has a separate entrance, its own small kitchen. You'd have privacy, independence, but Sophia would be under the same roof as her father." He rushed on. Before she could respond, "The rent would be fair market value. We insist on that. This isn't charity, Maya. It's a practical solution that benefits Sophia most of all." The proposal was so unexpected that Maya could only stare at him. Living in Nathan and Rebecca's home, even in a separate apartment, would be a daily reminder of the complex circumstances that had brought them together. Yet the practical advantages were undeniable. Sophia would have consistent access to her father, and Maya's commute to Horizon would be minimal. "What does Rebecca really think about this idea?" she asked, needing to be certain this wasn't just Nathan's solution. "It was her suggestion," he replied simply. "She's thinking of Grace, too, the chance for the girls to know each other as they grow up." Maya leaned against the doorframe, processing this development. "I need to think about it," she said finally, "and I need to actually get the job first." Nathan nodded, respecting her caution. "Of course, no pressure and no rush." He glanced at his watch. "I should let you finish preparing. Just wanted to wish you luck." He turned to leave, then paused. "Maya, whatever you decide about the apartment, about Boston, I'm grateful for the chance to know Sophia. And to know you beyond those 2 weeks 2 years ago." After he left, Maya stood holding the portfolio, its soft leather cool against her fingers. The interview at Horizon now represented more than a career opportunity. It was potentially the first step toward a future she had never imagined possible, one where Sophia would grow up knowing both her parents, perhaps even with a sister, in Grace. She placed the portfolio carefully in her briefcase, alongside the resume that had brought her to Boston and set in motion this extraordinary chain of events. Whatever happened in the interview, Maya knew with sudden clarity that the flight from Phoenix had already delivered her to a destination far more significant than a job opportunity. It had brought her family full circle, creating connections that not even the turbulence of their beginnings could break. 6 months later, Maya stood in the garden of the brownstone, watching as autumn painted the trees in brilliant hues of gold and crimson. Through the kitchen window, she could see Nathan and Rebecca preparing dinner together. Grace secured in her high chair, while Sophia crawled determinedly across the hardwood floor, chasing after a toy Rebecca had gifted her. The job at Horizon had exceeded her expectations. Her multicultural marketing campaign had already increased engagement with Latino consumers by 40%, earning her an early promotion. The garden apartment had become a true home, her own space within the larger family they were all creating together. It hadn't been easy. There were difficult days, awkward moments, emotional conversations that left everyone drained. The paternity test had confirmed what they already knew, and the legal arrangements that followed established Nathan's rights and responsibilities towards Sophia. But there were beautiful moments too. Sophia and Grace holding hands as they learned to walk, Sunday dinners where Maya's parents visited from Phoenix, Rebecca teaching Maya her grandmother's pie recipe while the babies napped. What had begun with a crying baby on a turbulent flight had transformed into something none of them could have predicted, a family defined not by convention but by choice, by daily decisions to put the children first, to find grace in complicated circumstances. Maya smiled as Nathan appeared at the door, Sophia in his arms, those matching eyes shining with recognition and love. "Daddy's here," he said softly to Sophia, the words no longer an unwitting comment to a stranger's child, but a promise fulfilled. Life's most beautiful stories often begin in unexpected turbulence. Sometimes it's on a flight where a poor girl's baby starts crying, and the CEO beside her whispers words that will change everything. If you believe in second chances, in the power of forgiveness to heal broken connections, in families formed through love rather than perfect circumstances, join our community of storytellers and listeners. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us that life's most meaningful journeys rarely follow a straight path. But the destinations they lead us to can be more extraordinary than we ever imagined. Remember to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope arrives in unexpected ways, and subscribe for new stories every week. The next journey is just a click away.